Hi YouTube, it's Blade. I just thought I'd do an update on the rack rebuild as I mentioned in my last video, and as you can see I have near enough completed the rebuild of the rack into this new HP rack. Unfortunately I do not have the sides for it or the doors front and rear, which doesn't really bother me because it keeps everything cool and quiet, so that's what we want really, because we don't want it to be too noisy because it's in our basement area and everything's upstairs and we don't want too much noise coming through. But as you can see, it's pretty much the same setup. There are some few differences with the TP-Link switch, which I've now added a fan to it, which has solved the network slowdown problem because the switch would overheat and the speeds would drop. I will do a more in-depth video on how I did that another time. At the same KVM, which allows us to switch between the servers that are running. As you can see, this is the router, and this is obviously our main server at the present moment we're running when I can see the mouse. The specifications of the server are, as you can see, there's 144 gigabytes of RAM on the server, which is far too much, but that was what was in it when I bought it. Further down, this is the server you just saw there, which is the Dell R710. Below that we've got an old 2950, and we've got our little R210 Generation 2 there, which is our pfSense router, and the new addition to the rack, which obviously I couldn't fit this thing into this rack because of the weight. We have got an APC, sorry about the focus, we've got an APC VA 5000 in the bottom, which I believe is a 4 kilowatt UPS, and it will run all of this equipment for more than 4 hours with no problems at all. And as you can see, these little LEDs here are the load on the UPS, and it's not even lighting the first one up, so it is massive overkill. It really is, but I got it for a really good price with new batteries in it, because the batteries are extremely expensive from what I understand. The downside to it is it does weigh 100 kilos on its own, so getting it into the rack was a big headache. Even with the batteries out, it was still at least 50 or 60 kilos. So if we have a look around the side of the rack, I am aware this network switch obviously should be mounted into the rack. I am going to get a new one at some point, which I can mount up here, because the cables really should come up into the switch like that, and they're obviously too long, the cables, but it's just so I could temporarily get it in. And I have attempted to manage the wires as good as humanly possible into the rack, so it's not too untidy. It looks untidy here, but there's a good reason for that, and I'll show you why if I can somehow release the server out of it. Both of these servers are on cable management arms, so you can basically pull it out without having to shut the server down. As you can see, all of the cables are in the management arm here, and they go to the back of the server. Same again with the old 2950, that is also on a cable management arm. So easy access for when, if you want to do some work on the servers, and admittedly you can't do too much to them when they're in operation. And as you can see, this huge power block here, we have a proper server grade PDU made by UPS. And you can see we're currently pulling 1 amp, which is why the server's under no load at all. The backup server I actually keep unplugged, and I power it up once every few days just to keep the RAID battery charged, because it actually idles even when it's off at 100 watts an hour, so that's 100 watt an hour. on the electric bill just by having it switched off and plugged in, which is a bit insane. Further down we got the back of the R210, and then we have our UPS in the bottom here, which is on a 17 amp circuit there, which is connected up to this PDU. You can see the wires on the back of the KVM. The reason this is taped off is because I've installed a fan, if you can see. No, I don't think you can. You can just about see the exposed bearing on the back of the fan there. So the reason this is closed off is so air will flow through this side and out the vent on the other side. And there's a tiny little fan controller in there. You can just about make out that little red LED. And I will explain how that was done in another video, because if you have one of these switches and you suffer with it suddenly slowing down when you're putting a lot of strain on it, it is very dark down here, I do apologise. That is the model number of this switch, and as I say, I highly recommend that you stay well away. But that is about it basically. That is our new server setup.